The battlefield had gone silent, but the silence did not feel peaceful. Smoke drifted slowly across the broken land, rising from shattered ships and melted metal. The sky above glowed faintly orange from distant fires, and the air carried the smell of burned circuits and dust. Hours earlier, this place had been filled with noise, fear, and explosions. Now it felt empty, like a story that had ended too suddenly. Lieutenant Daniel Hayes walked carefully through the ruins, his boots crunching over small pieces of metal. His armor showed signs of battle, scratches and dark marks across the surface, but his movements remained steady and calm. Most of the human soldiers had already returned to base after the ceasefire announcement. The official order had been clear: evacuate immediately and prepare for orbital cleanup. But Daniel had stayed behind. He moved slowly, scanning the area with his handheld device, searching for life signs. Many people would have said it was pointless. The battlefield had been cleared and any survivors should have been evacuated already. Still, Daniel believed that sometimes scanners missed things. Sometimes people were overlooked. He had seen it before. A soft wind pushed smoke across his path. He paused, listening carefully. At first there was nothing but the faint crackle of cooling metal. Then he heard it. A small sound, almost too quiet to notice. A weak breath. Daniel turned toward the source. Half buried under debris was a sleek alien transport craft. Unlike human ships, its design was smooth and curved, almost organic in shape. Silver lines ran along its surface, though many of them were now dark and broken. One side of the ship had collapsed inward, trapping whatever was inside. He approached cautiously, climbing over broken pieces of the hull. The entrance was blocked, but a gap in the metal allowed him to look inside. That was when he saw her. An alien woman lay against the interior wall, motionless except for the faint rise and fall of her chest. Her skin had a pale blue glow, soft and almost fragile-looking. Long silver markings traced across her arms and neck, flickering weakly like fading light. She wore damaged armor that looked ceremonial rather than practical, decorated with symbols Daniel did not recognize. He froze for a moment. Even without knowing much about alien culture, he could tell she was important. Everything about her appearance suggested status and authority. A delicate crown-like structure rested around her head, bent slightly from impact. A faint sound escaped her lips. She was alive. Daniel quickly climbed inside the ship, pushing aside loose debris. His scanner beeped rapidly as it detected unstable energy levels in her body. Her breathing was shallow, and one of her arms appeared broken. His communicator suddenly buzzed to life. "All remaining units report status," a voice from command said. "Orbital sterilization begins in 15 minutes. Evacuate immediately."
Daniel looked down at the alien woman. If he left now, she would die.
He hesitated only briefly. "Command," he replied calmly. "I've located a survivor. Severe injuries. Requesting extraction time."
There was a pause. "That is a Varelian combatant," Command responded sharply.
"Negative extraction. Leave the area." Daniel's jaw tightened slightly. "She's wounded and unarmed," he said. "Lieutenant Hayes, that is an order."
He stared at her again.
Her eyes opened slightly, revealing silver irises filled with pain and confusion. She looked directly at him, and for a moment the world felt strangely quiet. "You human," she whispered weakly.
"Yes?"
he said softly. Her gaze held no hatred, only exhaustion. Daniel turned off the communicator. He began working quickly, lifting metal away from her carefully so he would not cause more harm. She winced slightly, but did not resist.
"I'm getting you out,"
he said. She tried to speak again, but lacked the strength. He gently lifted her into his arms. She felt lighter than expected, fragile despite the armor she wore. As he carried her out of the ship, Distant explosions echoed across the battlefield, reminding him that time was running out. His shuttle waited nearby, its engines humming quietly. He climbed inside and placed her on the medical bed. The automated system activated immediately, scanning her body and projecting unfamiliar symbols across the display. Unknown biology detected, the AI announced. Adapting treatment protocols. A soft field of light surrounded her, stabilizing her breathing. Daniel sat beside her, watching carefully as her condition slowly improved. Outside the window, the battlefield began to glow as orbital weapons struck. Waves of light spread across the land, erasing everything left behind. Daniel exhaled slowly. If he had waited any longer, both of them would have been lost. The alien woman stirred again, her gaze slowly focusing on him. "Help me?" she asked weakly. He thought for a moment before answering. "No one deserves to be left behind," he said simply. Her eyes widened slightly, as if the idea surprised her deeply. "You are strange," she murmured, then closed her eyes again. The shuttle rose into the sky, leaving the burning battlefield behind. Daniel leaned back, feeling the weight of what he had done. He had disobeyed a direct order and saved someone considered an enemy. He did not regret it. Hours passed as the shuttle traveled toward the human forward base. The stars outside stretched endlessly, silent and cold. Daniel checked her vitals again and again, making sure she remained stable. At one point, she woke briefly, her gaze moving across the unfamiliar interior of the ship.
"They're not here," Daniel said gently. "You're safe." She studied him quietly, as if trying to understand something deeper.
"They left me," she said after a moment. Daniel did not know what to say to that. Maybe her people had believed she was already dead. Maybe they had been forced to retreat. War created difficult choices. "You're alive now," he said instead. Her lips moved slightly, forming what looked like a faint smile. When the shuttle finally approached the human base, warning lights appeared on his console. Multiple security signals activated. They already knew. As the shuttle landed, armed soldiers surrounded it immediately. The door opened slowly, and Captain Elena Ward stood waiting, her expression serious.
"Lieutenant Hayes," she said. "Step out."
Daniel obeyed, keeping his movements calm. "You disobeyed a direct order," she said firmly. "But—"
"Yes," he replied. She glanced inside the shuttle and froze when she saw the alien woman. "Is that who I think it is?" she asked quietly. "I don't know her name yet," Daniel said, but she needed help. The captain sighed, rubbing her forehead briefly.
"Medical team, move in," she ordered.
Doctors rushed forward, carefully lifting the princess onto a floating stretcher. As they carried her away, her hand shifted slightly, brushing against Daniel's arm as if she recognized him even in unconsciousness. He watched as they disappeared into the medical wing. The base buzzed with tension as news spread quickly. Some soldiers looked at him with curiosity. Others looked uncertain. Saving an enemy royal could have consequences no one could predict. Daniel stood quietly outside the medical room, waiting. He had made his choice, and somewhere deep inside, he felt that this was only the beginning. The medical wing of the human forward base felt unusually quiet despite the number of people moving through it. White lights reflected softly against smooth walls, and machines hummed gently as doctors and technicians worked with focused attention.
News had already spread across the base. A wounded alien princess had been brought inside by a human soldier who ignored direct orders.
Lieutenant Daniel Hayes stood near the observation window, watching silently as the medical team worked around the alien woman. She lay on a specialized treatment bed, surrounded by floating screens displaying data that shifted between human medical language and strange alien symbols. Her breathing was steady now, but faint pulses of blue light moved under her skin, reacting to the equipment. Human doctors had never treated a Varelian royal before, and every moment felt uncertain. Captain Elena Ward approached him slowly. You've caused quite a situation, she said quietly. Daniel nodded slightly. How is she?
Alive,
Ward replied.
barely when you brought her in, but stable now.
Relief passed through Daniel, though he kept his expression calm. Ward folded her arms.
Command is furious. Diplomats are already sending messages.
Some believe you may have started a diplomatic crisis. Daniel looked back through the glass at the princess.
Or maybe prevented one, he said softly.
Ward studied him for a moment before sighing.
Maybe, but until we know more, you're restricted to base. I understand. Hours passed as the medical team continued their work.
Scientists gathered data carefully, trying to understand how to adapt treatment to her alien biology. Every small improvement felt like a victory. Finally, one of the doctors stepped out of the room.
She's awake,
the doctor said.
and she's asking for the human who brought her here.
Daniel hesitated only briefly before entering. The room felt calm, filled with soft light. The alien princess sat partially upright, supported by energy fields that adjusted to her movements. Without her armor, she looked more vulnerable. Her long silver hair rested against her shoulders, and her glowing markings appeared steadier now. Her eyes focused on him immediately. "You stayed?" she said quietly.
Of course, Daniel replied.
She watched him carefully as if measuring his intentions.
My name is Liara,
she said after a moment.
Princess of the Varelian Crown.
Daniel Hayes. Lyra tilted her head slightly, studying him. You disobeyed your leaders. For me, I helped someone who needed it, he said simply. She seemed surprised by the simplicity of his answer. In my world, she said slowly, duty comes before individuals. In mine, Daniel replied gently, sometimes individuals matter most.
My fleet retreated, she said quietly. They believed I was lost. There was no anger in her voice, only sadness.
Daniel did not know her people or their decisions, but he understood the feeling of being left behind. You're here now, he said. She nodded faintly. Outside the room, tension grew as human leaders debated their next steps. Messages arrived from Varelian representatives demanding confirmation of the princess's condition. Some humans argued she should be returned immediately. Others believed her presence could open a path toward peace. Meanwhile, Lyra slowly regained strength. She began asking questions about humans, their culture, their history, their strange habits. Daniel visited often, answering her questions with simple honesty. She was fascinated by small things. You laugh often, she observed once as two nurses joked nearby.
It helps, Daniel said. In my world, leaders rarely laugh, she replied.
That sounds exhausting. A faint smile appeared on her face. Over time, trust formed between them, quiet but strong.
Liara noticed how Daniel treated everyone with respect, regardless of rank.
Daniel noticed how she observed everything carefully, always thinking before speaking. One evening, she stood near the window, looking out at the stars. Your people fight fiercely, she said softly, but they also protect those they do not know. We try, Daniel said. She turned toward him. You are different from the image our empire created of humans. Maybe both sides misunderstood each other, he replied. Before she could respond, alarms suddenly echoed through the base. Red lights flashed across the walls. Daniel moved instantly, stepping toward the door. Stay here. Lyra shook her head. I am not helpless.
I know, he said gently,
but you're still recovering. She hesitated, but nodded. Daniel rushed into the hallway where soldiers moved quickly toward their stations.
Unknown fleet approaching, someone shouted. Not human, not Varelian. The words sent a chill through him.
In the command center, holographic displays showed ships emerging from hyperspace. Their design was unfamiliar, dark and angular, radiating hostile energy. "They're powering weapons," an officer said.
Captain Ward turned toward Daniel. "Get back to the medical wing. We may need to evacuate."
What about her? Ward's expression softened slightly. She stays under protection. He returned quickly, finding Lyra already standing near the door, her expression calm but alert.
"What is happening?" she asked. "Unknown attackers," he replied. Her eyes narrowed.
Then this is no coincidence. Before he could ask what she meant, the base shook slightly as distant explosions sounded.
Outside the window, flashes of light filled space as defense systems activated. Liara stepped closer to him. "If they came for me," she said quietly, "then you are now part of this war because of your kindness. Then we face it together," he said. For a moment, she simply stared at him, as if his words meant more than he realized. The alarms continued to echo, signaling that the fragile peace was already being tested, and both of them knew that the choice made on the battlefield, the moment when a human refused to leave a wounded alien behind, had begun something far larger than either of them had expected. Red warning lights flashed across the corridors as alarms echoed through the base. Soldiers rushed past one another, their footsteps fast but controlled. Voices filled the communication channels, reporting new information every second. The calm atmosphere that had existed only moments before disappeared completely. Lieutenant Daniel Hayes moved quickly through the hallway toward the command center, his mind focused. The unknown fleet approaching the base had changed everything. The fragile balance between humans and the Varelian Empire now felt even more uncertain. Behind him, Princess Liara walked, despite her injuries, refusing to stay behind. Her steps were slower, but her posture remained strong. She had insisted on coming, saying that if the threat involved her people or her position, she needed to understand what was happening. When they entered the command center, holographic displays filled the air, showing space around the base. Dark ships hovered in formation, their design sharp and unfamiliar. They did not resemble human or Varelian technology. Captain Elena Ward stood near the central console, issuing orders.
"Defense shields at full power," she said. "All pilots prepare for launch." She turned when she noticed Lyra.
"I thought you were in recovery," Ward said. Liara lifted her chin slightly.
"I am still a leader. If this threat connects to me or my people, I must be here."
"Fair enough." One of the technicians spoke urgently.
"Incoming transmission from the unknown fleet."
The room fell silent. A distorted image appeared above the console. The figure on the screen was tall and armored, its face hidden behind a dark mask. Its voice sounded cold and mechanical.
"Surrender the Varelian Royal in your possession," the figure said. "Resistance will result in destruction." Everyone turned toward Liara.
Her expression remained calm, though her eyes sharpened slightly.
"They came for me," she said quietly.
Daniel felt tension rise in his chest. Who are they? Lyra hesitated before answering. They resemble the Kale Dominion, a faction known for hunting royal bloodlines to weaken empires.
"So they're not here for territory. They're here for her."
The transmission ended abruptly, replaced by weapon signatures powering up on enemy ships. "Battle stations," Ward ordered. Outside, human fighters launched into space, streaks of light moving toward the enemy fleet. Explosions flashed across the holographic display as the first shots were fired. Daniel watched silently, feeling the weight of the moment. Only days ago, humans and Varelians had been enemies. Now they faced a new threat together. Liara stepped closer to the console, studying the enemy formations. "They move strategically," she said.
"They will attempt to isolate command centers first."
Ward glanced at her. "You sound certain?"
"I have studied their tactics," Liara replied.
Ward nodded.
"Then help us." For the first time, a Varelian princess stood beside human officers guiding their defense. Outside the base, battle intensified. Enemy ships moved quickly, firing precise attacks aimed at weak points in the defense grid. Several human fighters were forced to retreat, their shields damaged. Daniel clenched his fists. He wanted to be out there helping, but his orders kept him inside. Suddenly, the base shook as a nearby explosion sent vibrations through the structure. "They've breached outer defenses," a technician shouted. Ward turned toward Daniel. "We may need ground teams if they attempt boarding." Daniel nodded. "I'm ready." Lyra looked at him. "You would fight for me again?" she asked quietly. "I would fight for anyone under my protection," he replied. A faint warmth appeared in her eyes. Moments later, emergency signals confirmed incoming enemy boarding pods. "Ground teams deploy!" Ward ordered. Daniel grabbed his equipment and moved toward the exit. Liara followed.
"No," he said firmly. "You stay here."
She shook her head. "I will not hide while others fight for my life." He hesitated, seeing the determination in her expression. "Stay behind me," he finally said. They joined a group of soldiers heading toward a lower docking corridor where enemy forces were expected to arrive. The atmosphere felt tense but focused. Everyone knew what was at stake. The sound of metal tearing echoed through the hallway as an enemy boarding pod crashed through the outer wall. Smoke filled the air as armored figures stepped out, their movements precise and coordinated. "Hold position," Daniel said calmly. The first shots were fired. Energy blasts lit the corridor, bright flashes reflecting against metal surfaces. Human soldiers worked together, pushing back the attackers step by step. Liara stayed close behind Daniel, watching carefully. She noticed patterns in enemy movements. "They favor the left flank," she said quickly. Daniel adjusted his position immediately, guiding his team to counter the strategy. Her insight helped them regain control of the corridor. Within minutes, the attackers retreated back toward their pod, realizing they had lost the element of surprise. Cheers rose among the soldiers as the immediate threat ended. Daniel turned toward Liara.
"You helped save lives."
She looked slightly surprised. "I only observed." Back in the command center, reports confirmed that human fighters had forced the enemy fleet to withdraw temporarily. The base remained damaged, but operational. As calm slowly returned, Liara stood by the window overlooking space. The distant stars glowed softly, contrasting with the chaos that had just occurred.
"They will return," she said quietly. Daniel joined her.
"Then we'll be ready."
She studied him for a long moment. "In my empire, humans were described as unpredictable and dangerous," she said.
"But you risk yourselves for others, even those you once fought." Daniel smiled slightly. "Maybe being unpredictable isn't always bad?" She laughed softly, a sound that felt rare and genuine. Outside, repair crews began fixing damaged structures, while pilots returned from battle. Humans moved with determination, refusing to give in to fear. Liara watched them closely. For the first time since her rescue, she felt something new. Not just gratitude, but hope. The unknown fleet had come seeking to end her life. Instead, they had pushed two former enemies closer together, and as she stood beside the human who refused to leave her behind, Liara realized that this alliance might change the future of both their worlds. The base did not return to normal after the first battle. Even though the unknown fleet had retreated, no one believed the danger was over. Repair crews worked without rest, moving through damaged corridors and rebuilding defensive systems. Ships launched and landed constantly, bringing supplies and reinforcements. Lieutenant Daniel Hayes stood near the observation window in the command center, watching the stars outside. The silence of space felt different now. It no longer seemed calm. It felt like a pause between storms. Princess Liara stood beside him, her posture stronger than before. The faint glow beneath her skin had returned to full brightness, showing that her recovery was nearly complete. Though she still wore simple medical garments instead of royal armor, she carried herself with quiet authority. "They are preparing for another attack," she said softly, watching the movement of human ships.
Daniel nodded.
"Command believes the same." Captain Elena Ward approached them, holding a data tablet. "We intercepted new signals," Ward said. "The enemy fleet is regrouping just outside long-range detection. They're waiting for something." Lyra's expression turned thoughtful.
"They will try one decisive strike. The Kale Dominion does not waste resources on long wars if a single precise attack can end the conflict."
"Then we need to be ready for that moment." A meeting began shortly after. Human officers gathered around the central table while Liara joined them as an equal advisor. It was a sight no one would have imagined weeks earlier, of a Relian princess helping humans defend their base. Holographic maps displayed enemy movement patterns. "They aim for leadership targets," Liara explained. "If they eliminate command, the rest falls into chaos."
"So they will strike the command center."
Daniel felt tension rise. That meant everyone here would be in danger. "We can turn that into an advantage," he said suddenly. All eyes turned toward him. "If they believe leadership is concentrated here, they'll focus everything on this area. We prepare defenses and counterattack when they commit." Liara studied him with quiet admiration. "You think like a strategist," she said. Daniel shrugged slightly. "Just trying to survive." Preparations began immediately. Defensive turrets were repositioned, shields reinforced, and pilots briefed on new tactics. The base transformed into a fortress waiting for the next move. Hours later, warning alarms sounded again.
"They're back," a technician announced.
Enemy ships appeared on the display, moving in tight formation. Unlike before, they did not hesitate. Energy signatures surged as weapons powered to maximum levels. The battle began instantly. Explosions lit space as human fighters engaged the fleet. Bright streaks of light crossed the darkness, ships moving fast to intercept incoming fire. Inside the command center, tension filled the air. Officers called out updates while Ward directed operations calmly. Liara watched carefully, analyzing enemy movements. "They are focusing here," she said. "Prepare for boarding." Moments later, multiple boarding pods launched toward the base. Daniel grabbed his weapon ready.
"I'll handle ground defense," he said.
Ward nodded. "Be careful." Liara stepped closer to him. "You do not need to risk yourself again." He smiled faintly.
"Too late for that. They moved together toward the lower corridors where the enemy was expected to arrive. The sound of metal tearing echoed again as boarding pods crashed into the outer hull.
Enemy soldiers advanced quickly, their armor dark and intimidating. The corridor filled with flashing lights as both sides opened fire. Daniel moved with precision, guiding human soldiers and adapting quickly to changing situations. Liara stayed behind him, but did not remain passive. She pointed out enemy movements, predicting their strategies and helping the defenders stay one step ahead. At one point, an enemy unit attempted to flank their position.
"Right side," she warned. Daniel reacted instantly, turning and stopping the attack before it could succeed.
The fighting was intense, but controlled. Humans fought not with anger, but with determination, protecting one another and holding the line. Eventually, the attackers began to retreat again, but outside, the main enemy flagship moved closer, preparing a powerful strike aimed directly at the command center. "We need to stop that ship," Ward's voice came through the communicator.
"If it fires, shields won't hold."
Daniel looked toward Liara. "I can help you reach it," she said.
"Their flagship has a vulnerable energy core, but it requires precise timing."
He nodded. A small strike team quickly prepared a shuttle.
As they launched into space, the battle raged around them, flashes of light reflecting against the shuttle's hull. Liara guided the pilot through enemy formations, identifying blind spots and weak defenses. They reached the flagship and infiltrated through a damaged section. Inside, corridors felt cold and mechanical. The enemy presence was strong, but Daniel and his team moved carefully, avoiding unnecessary fights and focusing on their objective.
They reached the energy core.
Liara accessed the system, her hands moving quickly across alien controls. "This will overload their weapons," she said. Daniel stood guard as alarms echoed around them. Seconds felt like hours. "Done," she said finally. They escaped just as the flagship's systems began to fail. Outside, the massive ship powered down, its weapons shutting off. Human forces quickly pushed the advantage, forcing the remaining enemy fleet to retreat completely. Silence slowly returned to space. Back at the base, cheers filled the corridors as soldiers realized they had survived. Liara stood beside Daniel near the observation window again, watching the last enemy ships disappear into the distance.
"You saved me," she said quietly.
"And today you saved many more. We did it together," he replied. She looked at him, her expression warm. "In my world, trust is earned through years," she said. "You earned mine in days." Outside, the stars shone peacefully once more. In the weeks that followed, negotiations between humans and Varelians began. The story of the human who refused to leave a wounded princess behind spread across both civilizations, becoming a symbol of cooperation. What began as a simple act of compassion had changed everything. And as Daniel and Liara stood together, looking toward the future, both understood that sometimes one choice, one moment of kindness, could reshape the destiny of entire worlds.